Okay, hello. I'm just going to do a little test to make sure all our audio is on, and we will get started right at 6 o'clock. Thank you for joining us. Very much appreciate you taking the time to listen to our upcoming plans for the 2020 school year. So hold tight. We'll be there in just 1 minute. Okay, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I will introduce myself. Maybe I didn't do that in the last few ones, but again, my name is Mark Holzman, Superintendent. I am pleased that you're here with us today. Just a few housekeeping items as we work through this presentation. First, if you have some questions, there's an opportunity for the chat box, and you can take a look at that. If you have questions, you can answer or put those in the chat box. Also, if you scroll down just a bit, if you can't see it, there's a link, and that link provides you an opportunity to click on it, and then that'll send a message to the Manitowoc Public School District. So our goal today is to take information that we had from the sessions at 1 o'clock and tonight's session, take a look at that and see how we can incorporate the thoughts and ideas, schedule those and put in a question and answer format some of the answers to the questions that you might have that arise tonight. The goal tonight is to kind of give you an overview of our back to school plans, help you understand a little bit about how we got to that information and share the data with you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen right now. And by sharing my screen, I'll take you through a presentation. During that presentation, we will have a number of times, 3 or 4, that I'll just take a pause. And during that pause, I will have the opportunity to take questions. Now, I'll tell you that I can't respond to your questions because when I'm presenting, I don't have the ability to see your screen or see the chat screen. I'm actually in a different area. So I'm just going to present here. And we have some staff. Thank you very much to our staff helping us out. They're going to collect all the feedback on the chat box and the feedback that you might use if you're using the link below. And then we're going to compile that into, again, question and answer, compare it with what we had from the afternoon session, compare it with, we had 2 sessions yesterday with our staff, and then provide that to our teams and to the board for their understanding. So with that, I just want to talk to you a little bit about our plan for today. First of all, we have some collective commitments, and we'll share a little bit about what our collective commitments are and how we got to those. We're going to share a little bit about our journey in our current state, how we got to where we are. We'll talk to you about the virtual options and the blended learning options. We'll talk to you a little bit about the social emotional wellness and what we're doing for that. We'll share with you the safety protocols and make sure that those are all in place. And then we'll kind of share with you the next steps. So again, I thank you very much for taking time today, and we'll move forward. So we talked about our return to school collective commitments. These were the lenses and the guides that we use in order to make our decisions. We use people first, equity for all, focus on learning, the data-driven decisions, and our collaboration. I want to share with you each of those so you kind of get an understanding of what our goals were as we're trying to create a plan for returning to school. First of all, we wanted to commit to the safety and well-being of our students, staff, and larger community. Without a doubt, that's an important piece of us. We're committed to providing our students and staff with a safe and welcoming learning environment, and we understand the challenges involved in returning to school. We want to provide options for our students, our family, and our staff in a compassionate, purposeful manner. We also know we need to be flexible. We have to be able to change based on the health environment or based on state and local health agencies giving us direction in order to make changes. We know that equity is important, and we're committed to providing necessary educational resources to make sure all students and staff feel welcome and accepted in their school. We want everyone to be successful and reach their full potential, regardless of their background or personal circumstances. We're aware that some students may need additional supports, and we're committed, to meeting their needs. We're going to focus on learning. We want to make sure, obviously, that our job is to provide educational opportunities for our kids, and our focus is going to continue to be on supporting the academic, social well-being of our kids. We want to make sure that we provide that in some clear standard-based targets and provide regular feedback for all of you. We're going to use data, and you'll hear about that tonight. We commit to utilizing multiple data sets to drive our instructional decision-making policies. We want to use that data when we're talking about instructional models, when we're talking about operational practices, health and safety protocols. These data will help us with short and long-term growth for our students and staff. We also have to maintain that fiscal responsibility, making sure that we have in mind things that we can do in a financially responsible manner. Finally, we want to talk about collaboration. We're committed to getting feedback with our stakeholders and provide opportunities for that regular feedback. We want to engage conversations with local state health professionals. We'll provide regular updates to our board, and our goals include listening, adapting, and implementing those educational models to the best we can. We want to do that in a safe and welcoming environment. Those are our collective commitments and the lenses we use in order to go through a return to school plan. Obviously, we're in a position today where we have concerns presented by COVID-19, and the pandemic remains on the rise. We use, and I'll share with you some data points that we're using, and we see that this week Manitowoc is as high as it's been over the last month. We know that's a concern, but we also know that we want to continue to provide opportunities for educational and emotional supports for our kids. We're going to stay up to date with the guidance from our CDC, DPI, DHS, and local health officials. I actually had an opportunity to have a meeting this morning with our local county nurses. And again, that gives us great feedback on some of the practices and protocols we have in place and making sure that we're getting feedback from our professionals. We gathered feedback from our students and staff and parents in the spring. We asked you some questions about distance learning and how did we do with that. And then we recently asked you some questions about returning to school and your comfort levels. From that, we created this timeline in terms of our preferred model return to school. That timeline, we're on track. We're meeting the second time here with our parents and getting some feedback. We'll take this feedback, have some more meetings tomorrow and Monday, and then provide a presentation to the board on Tuesday. Just to kind of give you an overview in regards to some of the survey results we saw. When we talk about families' comfort level, we asked people if they were very comfortable or comfortable. We combined those two from our families, and we found that 57% were either very comfortable or comfortable with a face-to-face model. 17% of our families said that they would not send their children back in any face-to-face model, so we've got to be prepared for that. Our staff's comfort level was blended model, face-to-face and distance. And again, that 39.2% said they were very comfortable or comfortable. What we did see that was absolutely the true outstanding and set apart from all was the number one priorities from our families was academic progress of their children and student safety. And we do know that those are two of our goals as we're moving forward with our plan. We talk about our staffs. They had concerns about this to compliance to health and safety protocols. the factors that they don't know about in returning to school. What does that look like for me, and how am I going to be in my room, and what does that look like? And then just the practices for cleaning, disinfecting, what kind of procedures do we have in place? I talked to you a little bit about data that we're using, and based on some supports from our health advisors, we're really using 4 different data points. These data points are available to everybody in the public. One is the activity level, and so the state puts an activity level. That is, activity level helps us understand the amount of cases based on it, whether that's increasing, decreasing from the previous 2 weeks. It also gives us a threshold of the number of cases per 100,000, so you can compare counties to counties. Manitowoc, there's 3 levels, high, medium, and low, and Manitowoc's currently in the high level. There's also on that same regional website data, there's an access to healthcare. Access to healthcare tells us how available medical care is based on the COVID-19 pandemic. And we're looking at that to try to determine if in fact there is that. The county health helps us with a lot of that information. The other piece that we're looking at is an ability to contact trace. And so contact tracing means if there's a child or an adult who is testing positive, what is the number of students that that person has been in either physical contact or less than 6-foot contact for more than 15 minutes. So that's generally the piece that we have to have. If in fact we have people who have been contact traced, we turn those names over to the county. The county then provides supports. We'll also help that student and the families in regards to how long or what their next steps are. County also wants us to have the ability to quarantine. And again, the county actually will give the order, but we have to have the ability to keep people away from who test positive to our general school population, whether that's an adult or a child. The challenge with all this is obviously balancing the public health with this public education and working with parents, childcare, our social emotional well-being, and the idea that we all want to get back face-to-face as soon as possible. We just need to know, we know that that is a challenge in times, and we have to make sure we're ready for that. So I'm going to just take a pause right now. What I'm going to do is allow you, if you have any additional questions, just for about a minute, you can put them in the chat box, and then I will come back in, like I said, about a minute and start our presentation from here. Okay, thanks for joining. Again, if you have any questions, I'm not able to see the chat at this time through the screen, but we do have people working on that. We're going to collect all that data and be able to create a question and answer. So that leads us to where we are now. And what we found based on our need to be able to distance, quarantine, contact trace, and our increasing model is that the Manitowoc Public School District will not start the school year with 100% face-to-face traditional model. We spent a lot of time talking about that, and what we've deemed is we can't bring back our students and staff in a safe manner. So we chose to continue to investigate other models. And the 2 models that we are going to investigate and share with you tonight is our full distance learning and our blended learning. Now, I do believe that parents have a pretty good understanding of what a traditional face-to-face looks like, so we're not going to spend a lot of time tonight talking about the face-to-face model. And again, no matter what model we use, we want to make sure that you have an understanding of that. We do know that we've had some time working through distance learning, but blended is new, so you're going to hear from those 2 pieces. What I will tell you is that right now we need a little bit more time, and I'm hoping that by the end of tomorrow or Monday morning, we shall get some additional research from the county or state health departments. They talk about a data point that's going to be helpful for schools. I was in a meeting on Thursday last week and they said it's coming soon, and I was in a meeting today and they said it's coming soon. So we're really hopeful that we're going to get that really, really soon. That will help us be able to identify some of those focuses. I'll talk about at the end why those data points are so important for us. But as we move forward, we're going to talk a little bit about the two models that we're moving forward with the board. So the first model I would talk to you about that we have some familiarity with is this full distance learning model. And again, if we find in the county and state says we have too much COVID-19 throughout our system and we can't come back in a face-to-face model, we have to come back in a blend in a 100% virtual model. We're familiar with Google Classroom for grades 1 through 12, and we use Class Dojo for 4K in kindergarten. We're committed to providing an engaging, relevant distance learning model to meet academic standards. And what I would articulate is no matter what model we provide and move forward with, if there is families who are not comfortable with coming back to school, we are going to provide a 100% virtual model for you. We're prepared to do that. We do know that in our current, if we are 100% virtual, it will look different than what it looked like in the spring of this year, March, April, May, and June, specifically because we have a better start to that, and we know that there's going to be changes in student attendance, student grading, and our accountability for students and their learning and distance learning in the spring. It'll look differently for our staff, and we definitely will make sure that we've improved. We've learned a lot about what that looks like. I would articulate again that I do not believe that distance learning is the best possible way of education. We are all about bringing kids face to face, but we also have to balance our interests with what's best for kids' safety and health. So that's where distance learning is an option. We also are going to spend a little bit more time talking about our blended learning options. And the reason why I spend more time in the presentation is not because it's our first priority or second priority or third priority. It's because this is a model that most of our families aren't familiar with. I want to make sure that I answer some questions, at least at the high level. So blended learning for 4K, right now our 4K or our typical 100% face-to-face says 4K is 4 days a week, AM or PM, so they're half days. In the current proposed blended model, they would be 2 days a week, either Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday, and distance learning on the other 2 days. Our goal in almost every model you'll see for blended is to reduce the class sizes to 10 to 12 in order for us to be able to have the 6-foot social distancing and reduce the class sizes into cohorts so that we don't have students intermingling with each other in light of the fact that somebody might test positive. So we're working hard on that, and that's what would happen. We would have no school on Friday. You're going to hear that throughout, specifically for our teachers to provide the professional development and support that they need, and to provide virtual learning and lessons. The elementary school blended model is almost similar in terms of their day. The academics a little different. We would have AM and PM cohorts, so we would take the schools and cut them in half the school in the morning, half in the afternoon. That's where you get the 7 to 13 students per classroom. That number will vary specifically depending on the number of students who choose to be 100% virtual, but in general, that's the number we're looking at. We would have school 4 days per week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and Friday would be for distance learning and for our teachers to gather again together to prepare those lessons for the entire week. We will have face-to-face time, and when I say that, in those classrooms, we'll have classrooms of, let's just say 10, 7 to 13, 10's right in the middle. Those 10 students will have one core teacher, will teach math, science, social studies, and language arts. The focus during the face-to-face time is going to be the emotional, social emotional, the language arts, reading, writing, and our math. Those will be our focus. Students will also have an art, music, physical ed class during the day, not all three, just one. One day would be art, for example, one music, one phy ed. What you'll see differently in that model is that those teachers will be coming into the classrooms as opposed to our students walking down the hallways to those rooms. Again, our ability to contact trace and quarantine if necessary, keeping our class sizes to less than 13 in this model. Again, what we're trying to do is provide half-day support, so students will go to school for a half a day. The lunch the lunch will be in the classrooms, so those will be in a grab-and-go kind of a setting that will be brought to the students. We would encourage our faculty to try to provide some supports at the beginning of the day, some classroom circles and some things like that we've done before. We're going to be excited to come together. We do know that we will try to utilize some outdoor spaces for Phi-Ed, and if we're going to sing, we're going to try to utilize those outdoor spaces as well. And we're going to have an opportunity for our counselors to come in and library on one of those days as well. We'll give you way more information if in fact we move to this elementary blended model, but we just want to make sure that you get the high picture of what's happening. Middle school is a little bit different than that. The cohort's exactly the same. We're trying to have 10 to 12 students per classroom. What we're doing in order to do that, because obviously those middle school grades are larger, we're seeing 6th grade is on one day, 7th grade is on another day, and 8th grade is on another day. And so the distance learning would happen all the days when they're not face-to-face. What we'll work on specifically would be that Monday, Friday would be those teachers collaborating and providing more supports for our planning time for our kids and deep cleaning and sanitizing of buildings. We'll have that opportunities to schedule electives at the beginning of the day and the end of the day to allow families to self-select whether they want to participate in those. But there will be 3 elective periods that students will be able to choose from. When I say electives, art, world language, music, band, family consumer ed, tech ed, those are the type of courses that they would be able to choose from. At Washington, they have a few more students, so they have 24 core teachers, and the core teachers are what we call math, science, social studies, and language arts or English teachers. Wilson has 20 core teachers. What we're going to do is each of those houses will have 30 to 40 students, and those houses will be divided by 4 core teachers. So that's where you get the number 10-ish. And what will happen is those core teachers will be moving around the room, working with a group of students in the same house for that instructional period. So if I'm a math teacher in that core, I will be teaching those students in that small 10 or fewer, maybe 12 students. So 2 teachers from each grade level are going to plan to face-to-face and distance learning for each course subject. So 2 math teachers plan that, 2 science, 2 social studies. And then all teachers are going to be able to teach that lesson and provide support during that one day. So if I'm a 6th grade math teacher, I'll teach 6th grade math, but I'll also provide support for math kids in 7th grade and 8th grade, just during the face-to-face time. The online instruction is going to happen and supports are going to happen with that 6th grade teacher. For the high school model, the high school, again, we're talking about cohorts, so we're trying to break the high school up into 4 cohorts. Those cohorts have 375 kids at one time. We're not breaking the high school up into freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. We're breaking up into 375 grade level groups. The cohort attends 2 days per week, so there are 2 half days. It's a Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, morning or afternoon. So if you look at that, you can see how those are. There's 4 cohorts, a Monday morning and a Monday afternoon, and a Tuesday morning and a Tuesday afternoon. The cohorts, again, are multi-grade level groups. That's the 375 kids. The cohorts will be organized into grade level houses, and grade level houses will have only students of your grade, groups of 20 to 24 students with 4 core grade level teachers assigned to each house group. So again, what's happening is while I'm with my house, and then we talk about that, the language, I'm going to be with kids in my grade. So the house is going to have 10 to 12 students split up into 2 teachers. So if I'm a math teacher and I'm working with geometry, for example, I will have 2 different groups of 10 to 12 who I'll be working with in math. Some of those kids will be my students in geometry, but because I have a grade level, I might have some students who have algebra and some students who have geometry, and I'm going to be able to support both of those. I might not be the expert, but because I've worked with the teacher, I might teach a different algebra class than the one that's in there, but I will have the common planning and the common activities going on. One of the things that we do know is the teachers are going to facilitate that distance learning model in Google Classroom. They'll come together, and once at the beginning of the week, we're going to put out a 1-page sheet that articulates the learning targets specifically for those core academic pieces. The face time will focus on connecting and supporting distance learning needs, and then provide interventions for kids who need that and enrichment for kids who need a little bit more. One of the things that we do know is we're interested in coming together, and in order to do that in a safe way, we've got to reduce the number of kids who are in our buildings. If we don't reduce the number of kids in our buildings, we don't have that ability, again, to contact trace and reduce the spread. So that's the high school, middle school, and elementary school blended model. I'm just going to take 1 minute again to allow you to ask questions in either the chat box or the link that's listed below. And I will start with the second or the third set of slides, which specifically talks about our social wellness, and then what kind of protocols for health supports are put in place. Okay, again, thank you so much for your time tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about social emotional wellness. I will tell you again that we are interested in trying to support our students' mental health and mental wellness. We'll continue to have school-based mental health services with community partners available in our buildings. We'll have ongoing planning to support our students' social emotional needs. You'll see those small class sizes with adults, and we'll have some opportunity to do some additional supports for kids that might not happen in a larger class size. The mental wellness coordinator in the district continues to develop plans and resources for our teachers and our aides in order to support this emotional and social emotional health, and we're really excited about that opportunity. One of the things that we do know is that this is stressful not just for kids, but for adults as well, and we have EAP supports we continue to offer to staff, and we want to make sure that our staff is healthy as well. If we don't have adults, or if our adults are ill and we're concerned about the number of adults that are available, either substitutes or through potential quarantine, we want to make sure that our staff comes to work and is healthy. So we're concerned about that as well. The next areas that I want to talk about are the safety practices and protocols, and just kind of give you a little bit of an overview on what the expectations are for our students when they come back and our staff, and specifically what we've done currently. So what you'll see in all of our areas, we call them our high face-to-face areas for the public, is plexiglass barriers, very similar to what you've seen in the public places, whether that's grocery stores or other areas. We've got floor decals that we'll have in high public traffic areas, making sure that people have seen the 6-foot distancing and making sure that students are trying to stay 6 feet apart. We do know that hand sanitizers and social distancing and the signage that we're going to have for washing your hands are in places in the bathrooms and in areas where we can share this message. We've ordered 400 hand sanitizer stations that will be located throughout all of our district buildings. Most of those will be in the hallways near classrooms when they're coming and going. They'll be able to utilize those. We want to make sure that we create space in classrooms and other common areas for social distancing. Again, the important piece would be keep kids apart, and if in fact there is something that we need to inform our family or county on, we'll be able to contact trace and only eliminate a few kids, not all kids. We also have an isolation room. We'll continue to talk about that and what that looks like. Basically, an isolation room is for students who have COVID, or adults, I suppose, who have COVID symptoms. And in that case, we want to make sure that we're keeping the students who have the symptoms separate from someone who has a skinned knee or a loose tooth. And that's something that we absolutely want to make sure that we're doing and keeping our healthy kids away from those who may have COVID symptoms. We've also had a couple other opportunities to look at how we can improve the healthy environment. Increasing our building ventilation is possible. Obviously, in the fall and in the spring, when the weather is nice, we can open up some windows to get some outside air in. That will help that. But we do have the ability to increase the number of how often our air exchangers circulate the outside air to the inside using the building ventilation, and we will continue to adjust that. We've always been in compliance, but we will likely increase that and making sure that we're providing fresh air in our buildings. We have enhanced protocols for cleaning and disinfecting classrooms and common places and high-touch areas. What I would articulate is that we've always had a plan in place for cleaning and disinfecting. What we've done in the past is always disinfected our bathrooms and our high-touch areas, things like doorknobs, hallway handles, bathrooms. But what we weren't doing is we weren't necessarily disinfecting classroom desks. So what we're going to need to do now when we bring students back to school is we need to make sure that we've got enough support staff to disinfect desks. We did a primary case study and found it's going to take us about 5 to 7 minutes. Now that was with a full class, 20 plus desks to disinfect than it would be to clean. That's something we've taken into consideration, and we're prepared to hire additional staff or reallocate staff in order to make sure that we provide that. We do know, I talked a little bit about the hand hygiene and reinforcement of hand hygiene. We know that there are basically 4 areas that we can do, and washing hands and using hand sanitizers are 2 of those 4 areas that really help support the reduction of the spread. We also are adjusting student traffic patterns. You're not going to see hundreds of kids moving throughout the buildings in groups. We're going to keep kids in places and move adults. That's the general thought process, and making sure that we can help support that. Our day-to-day operations, students and staff will be required to wear masks with the exception of medical or other specific conditions. We do know that masks, social distancing, hand washing, and sanitation are the 4 main areas in reducing the spread of COVID, and we want to make sure that masks will help support students, it'll help me be more safe, and it'll help my classmates and the adults in the building be more safe. So we will ask that. Again, wearing masks is something that will have an opportunity to help students understand how to do that better, and will help support that. We will provide 2 cloth masks to students. We're working through the process of what it looks like for taking home or coming back, because we do not want students to be eliminated from learning if they didn't have their mask. So we'll make sure that we can get them one. We also know that there'll be some expectations for medical or things that don't work. And our youngest children may have some opportunities for learning and some breaks that they need to have. But we want to take a learning opportunity to make sure that we're supporting that. We also will have temperature checks. Students' temperatures will be taken prior to the start of school day. We've ordered the PPE necessary and have that in stock. All the non-touch thermometers. We're working with our nurses in the buildings to make sure that we can help support that. We have a staff protocol where the staff have an online screener where they're looking through data that says that I'm safe, I'm not, I don't have any kind of symptoms, and I haven't traveled in places that might make me a high risk. We also are articulating again for both students and staff that they're to remain home if they're symptomatic. We worked with Brant Bus. They did an excellent job working with us on the bus precautions and what the safety looks like on the bus. We also are continuing to welcome family transportation. Many times families drop their kids off, and this might be the year that they do it more than others. But having said that, we will work hard on making sure that we have precautions on the bus to support a great day-to-day operation. We're going to enhance the exits and entrance. We're going to limit that public entrance. So again, unless it's an emergency for adults, or we're having like a hired vendor that comes in, something happens with the water leak or HVAC, we'll make sure that they're screened and masks and allow them to come in through the main office, but we won't have visitors and vendors and adults coming in and volunteering in the classrooms. Obviously, the student movement is limited, and we want to make sure that we support the students in the classroom, and the adults will do that. Meals, we talked a little bit about. They're going to be delivered and eaten in the classrooms in individual packaging. We're going to do everything we can to not share objects in the classroom in common places. We want students to keep their own pieces. We know that outside trips are going to be restricted at this time. If we're not back face-to-face, we're not going to go on field trips. Visitors, we talked a little bit about that, are restricted. And again, a big piece of this is regular systematic communication. We want to make sure that we're talking to families by the district, or our schools are sharing their information with you so that you have as much information as possible. So that's our day-to-day operations. I'll kind of talk to you a little bit about our next step and what we're going to do moving forward. So we're still looking at these pandemic thresholds, and what I really want to be able to do is articulate to you that if we are in a blended model and our thresholds get better, meaning that we have less cases, or we go from high risk to medium risk, we can then move to a face-to-face model. And the same regression if we happen to be in a blended model and we continue to see escalating and our county recommends that we go back, I'd like to tell you that in advance as well. We do know it's going to take some time to move from one space to the other, meaning if we're in a virtual model to go to a blended model, or if we're in a blended model to go to a face-to-face model. But we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can in order to get back to full-time face-to-face. And in order to do that, we've got to take some action. We've got to be safe. We've got to make sure that we're doing everything we can to reduce the spread. We're going to reconnect with work groups to identify our preferred model again, hopefully giving the board this presentation and maybe some other guidance that we hear from the state or local health department that I shared with you earlier. We're going to continue to monitor these health results and see if there's anything else we need to do for August, but we want to be able to give parents by the end of next week a communication on this is the model we're choosing. Again, we have to be prepared to adjust to any kind of changes in our environment. And we do know that the state and local health department can require some changes. We have to be ready for that. Again, I know that this is a big overview picture. I will stop sharing my screen here and just kind of work through that process with you. I know, again, that this is different. We are definitely looking at every data point that we have, but what I want to be able to do is create a vision for you so that our students and our staff and our parents all have some hope. The hope is that if we get better as a community, we can come back to school. If we compare our research data from June till today, we were actually way healthier in June than we are today. Now, I don't know if that has a lot to do with us coming together and 4th of July and those kind of areas, but if we don't, as a group, come together and get a little bit healthier, we're going to have the Labor Day coming up, and I really am concerned about what that looks like in the middle of September, because we have the opportunity to make some adjustments in our own system, but if the health of the community gets worse, the county or the state are the ones who are going to tell us you're done, just like we heard in March. That's not what our goal is, obviously. We want to bring kids back if we can, but we want to make sure that we take feedback tonight. We took some feedback earlier. We do it in the best manner we possibly can. So again, I very much appreciate your time. Spent about 30 minutes of listening to me talk, probably way too much. I appreciate everything you're doing, working with our kids, and hopefully being safe. And what I will do is I will leave this link open for about 3 or 4 more minutes. If you'd like to have some additional comments, feel free to put those in. If not, be well, and I will see you around. Thanks for joining us, and have